There are stories in history that echo across the ages, tales of rulers and conquerors who shaped the destinies of nations. But among them, one man stands apart, not for his military might, not for his conquests, but for the sheer brilliance of his mind. His name is Solomon, the son of King David, remembered as the wisest king to ever walk the earth. Imagine a single man whose words were sought after by kings and queens, whose decisions carried the weight of justice and fairness, and whose wealth and splendor left visitors stunned beyond words. A man so gifted in wisdom that entire nations trembled with awe at his insight. That man was Solomon. But his story isn't simply about wisdom and glory. It's about choices. It's about how one man, given everything, wisdom, riches, fame, and honor, could still lose his way. His life is both an inspiration and a warning. And by the end of this story, you'll see why the Bible calls him the wisest man who ever lived, and yet also shows us that wisdom alone is not enough to save us. The story begins with King David, Solomon's father. David was a man after God's own heart, a warrior king who had established Israel as a powerful nation. But as David grew old, questions arose about who would succeed him. There were older sons, ambitious princes, and political intrigue brewing in the palace. Yet it was Solomon, not the most obvious choice, who was destined to take the throne. In 1 Kings chapter 1, we read about the tense moment when Adonijah, David's older son, tried to declare himself king. He gathered chariots, horsemen, and 50 men to run before him, proclaiming himself the rightful heir. But David, with the guidance of the prophet Nathan and Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, made a decisive move. He ordered that Solomon be anointed as king while he was still alive. The trumpet sounded, and the people shouted, "Long live King Solomon!" Adonijah's rebellion crumbled, and Solomon's reign began, not with war, but with divine appointment. Now imagine the weight on young Solomon's shoulders. He was not just inheriting a kingdom, he was stepping into the shoes of a legend. David had united the tribes, defeated enemies, and brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. Solomon's challenge was different: to govern wisely, maintain peace, and honor God. Early in his reign, Solomon showed his heart. In 1 Kings chapter 3, we're told he went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, and there, God appeared to him in a dream. The Almighty asked him a question that could change everything. Ask for whatever you want me to give you. Think about this for a moment. The Creator of the universe offering Solomon a blank check: power, wealth, fame, victory. Anything he could imagine was on the table. But Solomon's response was extraordinary. Instead of asking for riches or long life, he said, "Give your servant, therefore, an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this thy so great a people?" God was so pleased with this request that he gave Solomon not only unmatched wisdom, but also wealth and honor beyond any king of his day. In 1 Kings 3:12, God's words ring with power. "I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be." This was the beginning of Solomon's legacy, the king who sought wisdom above all else. But Solomon's wisdom wasn't theoretical. It wasn't just knowledge of the stars, plants, and animals, though he had that too. In fact, 1 Kings 4:33 says, he described plant life, from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of walls. He also taught about animals and birds, reptiles and fish. His was practical, life-changing wisdom that revealed truth in the most difficult situations. And one of the first and most well-known examples comes in the form of a shocking case. Two mothers, one living baby, and no evidence to prove who was telling the truth. Two women who lived in the same house both gave birth. One baby died during the night, and each woman claimed the living child was hers. There were no witnesses, no family to testify, just two desperate mothers standing before the king, both pleading their case. Now imagine yourself in Solomon's place. No DNA tests, no court records, no way to verify the truth. How could anyone possibly decide? But Solomon did something extraordinary. He called for a sword. Then he gave a command that shocked everyone in the room. Cut the living child in two and give half to one and half to the other. The court gasped. The guards hesitated. Was the king serious? But before the sword could fall, one woman cried out in anguish, "Oh, my lord, give her the living child, and by no means kill him." The other woman, coldly, agreed to divide him. At that moment, Solomon knew. The true mother's love was revealed, not in words, but in her willingness to give up her claim to save the child's life. Solomon decreed, "Give the living child to the first woman. She is the mother." The Bible tells us that all Israel heard of this judgment and stood in awe because they saw that God had given Solomon wisdom to administer justice. This wasn't just cleverness. This was divine insight into the human heart. And Solomon's reputation spread far and wide. Soon, his court was filled with envoys from nations seeking his counsel. His wisdom extended beyond justice. It reached into philosophy, science, and even riddles. Kings and rulers would travel long distances just to sit at his feet and listen. One of the most dramatic visits came from the Queen of Sheba, recorded in 1 Kings chapter 10. She had heard rumors of Solomon's greatness, but she didn't believe them. So she came to test him with hard questions, bringing caravans of gold, spices, and precious stones. But when she arrived and saw Solomon's wisdom in action, his wealth, the splendor of his palace, the food on his table, the clothing of his servants, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple, she was overwhelmed. She said to him, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me." Think about that. His reputation was so great that even exaggerated rumors didn't do justice to the reality. Solomon's wisdom touched every area of life. His legacy includes the Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon, books filled with timeless insights about life, relationships, and the pursuit of meaning. Proverbs 4 verse 7 declares, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding." This was the voice of a man who valued insight above all treasures. But the story does not end with glory. For years, Solomon's reign was unmatched. He built the magnificent Temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, a structure so glorious that priests could not even stand to minister when the ark was brought in because the glory of the Lord filled the house of God. 2 Chronicles 5 verse 14. His wealth was staggering. Silver in Jerusalem became as common as stones. His trading fleets brought back gold, ivory, apes, and peacocks from distant lands. He had peace on every side and honor from every king. And yet, with great blessing comes great temptation. Slowly, the man who once asked only for wisdom began to drift away from the God who gave it to him. 1 Kings chapter 11 reveals the heart of his downfall. But King Solomon loved many foreign women, from the nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods." Solomon did not heed that warning. Instead, he allowed his desires to overcome his devotion. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and many of them worshipped foreign gods. Little by little, their influence began to erode his loyalty to the Lord. The Bible tells us plainly, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. 1 Kings 11, verse 4. This is a chilling verse, because it shows us that even the wisest man on earth is not immune to compromise. Picture this: the same king who built the temple of God, now constructing altars for Chemosh, Molech, and Ashtoreth, gods of the surrounding nations, some of whom demanded child sacrifices. The one who had prayed for wisdom was now divided in heart, living a contradiction. This disobedience had consequences. God had warned Israel again and again not to follow other gods, for he is a jealous God. And now he spoke to Solomon. Since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. 1 Kings 11, verse 11. Though God showed mercy by delaying the judgment until after Solomon's death, out of respect for David, trouble began to stir. Enemies rose up. Hadad the Edomite, Rezon the king of Aram, and Jeroboam, one of Solomon's own officials, who would later lead a rebellion that split the kingdom in two. Think of the irony here. The man whose wisdom made nations bow began to sow the seeds of division that would fracture Israel for generations. His riches did not protect him. His power did not shield him. His wisdom, without obedience, became his downfall. The book of Ecclesiastes, attributed to Solomon, gives us a haunting glimpse into his later reflections. He writes, "I have seen all the works that are done under the sun. And behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit." Ecclesiastes 1, verse 14. The man who once had everything realized that without God it was meaningless. Wisdom, wealth, pleasure, achievements, all were empty pursuits if not grounded in reverence for the Lord. And so, Solomon's story, once shining with glory, begins to dim. The great king who started with humility ended with compromise. His kingdom, though still intact at his death, was destined for division. Now, we come to the heart of the matter. Solomon's story is not preserved in Scripture to entertain us. It is there to teach us, to inspire us, to warn us, and to call us to wisdom that goes beyond intellect. The first lesson is this: true wisdom begins with humility before God. When Solomon asked for wisdom instead of wealth or power, he showed that he understood his dependence on the Lord. Proverbs 9, verse 10, written under his name, declares, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." That's where wisdom starts, not in books, not in experience, but in reverence for the Creator. The second lesson is that wisdom must be lived, not just spoken. Solomon could write proverbs filled with truth, but when he failed to obey his own words, his life unraveled. He wrote, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Proverbs 4, verse 23. Yet his own heart was not guarded, and it turned toward idols. The warning is clear. Knowing the right thing is not enough. We must do it. The third lesson is that compromise destroys greatness. Solomon didn't fall in one day. It was gradual. Small steps of disobedience, small compromises that seemed harmless until they added up to ruin. His story reminds us that no one is too wise, too strong, or too successful to fall. The moment we think we are safe is the moment pride blinds us. The fourth lesson is that wealth and success cannot satisfy the soul. Solomon had palaces, gold, fleets of ships, and a kingdom at peace. Yet in Ecclesiastes he confesses, "Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless." Ecclesiastes 5 verse 10. If the richest man in the world found emptiness in riches, what makes us think we'll find fulfillment there? And finally, the fifth lesson. The conclusion of wisdom is obedience. Solomon ends Ecclesiastes with a sobering truth. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Ecclesiastes 12 verse 13. After all the wealth, power, pleasures, and regrets, this is what remains: reverence for God and obedience to him. So what does Solomon's life say to us today? It says that the wisest choice you can ever make is to seek God first. It says that true greatness is not measured by wealth or fame, but by faithfulness. And it says that wisdom without obedience is like a lamp without oil, bright for a while, but destined to burn out. King Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived. His judgments revealed the truth. His writings shaped generations. His wealth and splendor left kings and queens speechless. And yet, his downfall shows us that wisdom alone cannot save us. Only a heart that clings to God can. So I leave you with this question. If God appeared to you today and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you," what would you ask for? Would you ask for riches, for success, for influence? Or would you, like Solomon at the beginning, ask for wisdom, a heart to discern right from wrong, to walk in God's ways, and to live with understanding? Because here's the truth. The wisdom that Solomon once had is still available today. James 1 verse 5 tells us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him." So ask, seek, pursue wisdom. But don't just learn it, live it. For in the end, the wisest choice is not just to know God's truth, but to walk in it,